Welcome to the Archaeology Studio. Today's episode considers the Anthropocene in an archaeological perspective. By the end of this episode, you will be prepared to discuss what the Anthropocene represents and what it implies. You can consider how this concept relates with archaeology. The word Anthropocene includes two parts. First, anthropos refers to people. Second, the suffix of "cene" in this case is intended to accord with the language of geological time units, such as the Pleistocene or the Holocene. The word does not actually refer to a traditional geological period. Rather, it was invented as a way to conceptualize the time period of when people have affected ecological conditions at a global scale. Immediately, you can question when the Anthropocene started. Did it begin with the existence of our species? If so, then it would contradict the existing geological distinction between the Pleistocene and the Holocene. Did something specific happen during our current Holocene that changed the relationship between people and the Earth's environment? If so, then what happened? Where? And when? In any case, if the Anthropocene is a legitimate time unit as the name implies, then what criteria can define it? At best, the Anthropocene functions as a concept, and in fact it does not meet the criteria of a geological time unit. In geological science, a time unit is defined by the physical existence of a stratigraphic layer or formation that can be distinguished from everything else that existed prior to itself. The physical evidence is known as a golden spike that serves as an authenticating reference specimen. So far, no single physical entity in the world of geology can point to the specific beginning of the Anthropocene, and no golden spike exists that otherwise would gain support from the International Commission on Stratigraphy or the International Union of Geological Sciences. The Earth's geology includes a unified chronological order of stratigraphic layers and formations. At different points in geological history, new things happened in the world. For example, when specific plants or animals suddenly appeared inside real geological layers. In this way, geological time units can be diagnosed consistently worldwide. The same physical criteria and definition of a golden spike can be applied anywhere in the world. The core practical problem for the Anthropocene is the inability to identify a golden spike that represents the first instance of human impacts at a worldwide scale. To the contrary, archaeological research repeatedly has shown how people affected the environment in many different ways ever since the existence of our species. The outcomes have been variable all around the globe and throughout human time. This extensive variability disallows a single golden spike for defining the Anthropocene. Additionally, logical or philosophical issues argue against the concept of the Anthropocene. If the Anthropocene is a singular entity, then how can it accommodate the reality of variable types and degrees of human impacts? Furthermore, does it imply a singular pre-human span of time, regardless of the established geological time units? Looking into the future, what possibly could indicate the end of the Anthropocene and therefore the termination of human impacts in the world? The Anthropocene cannot be substantiated by the criteria of a golden spike. no single point in time can refer to the beginning of the Anthropocene. Rather, human impacts in the world have been greatly variable across the globe and throughout time. Many archaeologists have studied exactly this variation, deliberately looking at the range of types of human impacts, the degrees of effects, and the different time periods and contexts that were involved. Given the inability to clarify the beginning of the Anthropocene, a different approach simply moves the goalpost from the initial moment of the Anthropocene to a later period of increased human-caused impacts. This approach looks for a kind of tipping point when the human impacts became overwhelming or dominant in global ecology. Logically, though, this approach involves all of the same problems of searching for the beginning of the Anthropocene. It simply moves the goalpost, or shifts the focus to the ambiguities, inconsistencies, and complications of how to define the tipping point in ecological history. From real excavations, the physical evidence reveals different possibilities of many potential tipping points of human-caused impacts. You can consider what geological layers or time periods contain the evidence of when the human species expanded and migrated around the globe. You can consider when people manipulated the natural world in terms of the plants, animals, water, and minerals. For many thousands of years, people have practiced variable strategies of extracting clay, stone, metal, and other resources from the earth. Likewise, people have domesticated plants and animals all around the world for different reasons and at separate times. People have developed many ways of controlling water resources, effectively reshaping the environment. Ancient farmers and even some hunter-gatherer groups were responsible for converting large tracts of forests and natural habitats into culturally rendered landscapes. Throughout human evolutionary history, people have used the natural world to create new products, inherently changing the relationships between people and the environment. Any of these examples could be viewed as the beginning of the Anthropocene or as a tipping point in defining the Anthropocene. Most importantly, though, all of these examples occurred in variable forms, in different places, and at different times, and no single occurrence can define the Anthropocene. Possibly the Anthropocene could be redefined more narrowly as the current conditions today of human-caused climate change at a global scale. The current situation is more extreme than prior instances of human impacts on the global environment. This concept could be effective in its narrowly defined parameters, but then it would not meet the full scope of the word Anthropocene as originally intended. For archaeologists or anyone who may want to study the Anthropocene, considerable problems need to be addressed simply in defining the Anthropocene in the first place. The intended concept of the Anthropocene potentially can be useful, yet its inconsistencies and ambiguities need to be resolved. In concluding this episode, now you should be familiar with the concept of the Anthropocene and how it may or may not be applied, especially in archaeology. I hope that you enjoyed this episode and that you will explore more with the Archaeology Studio.